do something bad to us, we are going to do things to you that have never been done before.
Whoa, bit of a grab there at the end. I'm just trying to see whether or not the Rumble channel is working. If you see me watching over here, that'll be what that's all about. Should have brushed my hair. Been out in the rain. Can't do a thing with it. You know how it is. I think I might just stop that. I think it's going to slow down the stream somewhat. The rain appears to have stopped, at least for about the last hour or so. It has been pretty solid in our part of the world most of the day. And I can tell you that some of the new swales have worked extremely well. If you don't know what a swale is, it's to do with moving water from one place to another and trying to wash as little as possible away doing it. But got a couple of roads on the property that have swales on them, and we've needed to make sure they've been going okay. Actually been doing a great job, so the water's getting away and not damaging the road at all at the moment, which is really, really good. Speaking of the property, if you are at all interested in a little bit of work and you've got a good back, you don't mind loud noises and big machines, then we might have a bit of work for you out here at the property. Now, we've got a lot of wood clearing to do. Most of the wood is on the ground already, and if you have a chainsaw, you'd be very welcome to bring it. But we need people to help with mulching in particular. So we have, like I say, a lot of downed wood, trees and such from the tornado that came through this area last Christmas. And it's been on the ground now for sort of 6 months, 6 months, 7 months, 8 months. Yeah, 8 months. And well, quite rightly, Cass and everybody on the property want it all cleaned up. So I'm doing my best, but it is a big task. So there will be an hourly rate, and it'll all be an hourly rate that you'll be very, well, it's all cash in hand, put it that way. But if you want to come out and stay, then you won't be charged anything to camp out here either. So if you've got a caravan or a van of some kind, then there are places out here for you to come and stay. And I would tell you that weather dependent, there is some weeks of work here. We have that much wood on the property that I would say there would be some weeks of work. And it doesn't mean that you've got to come out here and sweat your ass off for 8 hours a day or whatever. We don't want to work anybody into a grave, so particularly me. So rest assured, while it is hard work, it's heavy work. You've got to have a good back. Got to be able to, we'll make the wood liftable size and hopefully sort of throwable size, because if we can get a bit of a chain going, it's only the person at the very end at the wood chipper who has to be a bit accurate with their throw to get it in the jaws, and all done. And we have a very efficient wood chipper. So if you are interested in being part of that, Cass asked me to mention it. She and Sam are essentially looking after all of this. But if you are in the southeast corner of Queensland, Gold Coast, Brisbane, Northern Rivers, that sort of area, and you're looking for a bit of change of scenery for a day, a week, a month, then we might be able to help you out and throw a few bucks in your pocket at the same time. So email me, carl@vofhq.com. Put in the subject line chainsaw, and I'll know that, it's something I need to address very quickly, or I'll just forward it on to Sam or Cass, and one of them will be in touch. But we will we'll be commencing the operation fairly soon as the rain disappears and it's not dangerous underfoot to be standing on logs and that sort of thing. So we're lucky here. As much as it gets wet, it also dries out very, very quickly. So we won't have to wait too long for any of that. Angelina was first in the room tonight. Hello, how are you? And yes, absolutely stunning to see the sun. Well, you must be down my part of the woods because we didn't really see sun until late this afternoon. But I had to make a quick dash to Brisbane, to the southern end of Brisbane today, and it was quite nice there, actually, really nice. There had been rain, but at that time it was blue sky, and looking back up towards Brisbane, it looked like totally blue sky, so I don't know how it worked out for the rest of the day. Paul Orchard, nice to have you in. Tony, my good friend. I've posted in the chat, folks, at the very top of the chat, just after Tony has introduced himself. There is a link to today's little chat that I did from the car. That would have only been seen on the Nun 2K channel, and I haven't been able to get a hold of Vince to ask him to put it up on Rumble. So post it over on the Rumble channel as well. So if you want to go and have a bit of a look there at what I had to say earlier today, we will cover some of that in what I have to say tonight. So we'll see what happens. So I've posted that a couple of times up in there. G'day, Tim. How are you, mate? Yeah, thanks, mate. I love you. I know you've got your hands full, mate, and you're in the business of putting wooden things back together at the moment, not tearing them apart. I'd hate to get you on that particular slant. So you stick with what you're doing, brother, and you'll be fine. G'day, Neville. Nice to have you in, mate. Thanks for the emails. And Toxic, good to have you back in. The Rockin' Housewife, haven't seen you in for a little while. G'day, Phil. Hope you're well, brother. The personal accountant is in the building. Now, speaking of personal accountants, I am not completely sure, personal accountant, if in fact you are a personal accountant, but there does seem to be some very interesting news in the accountant or the accounting world. Yeah, I know. Who knew that there would be such interest? And let's be honest, not being the world's most exciting job, but still a very, very important job. The laws about whether or what you as a accountant particularly, but it might be a financial services advisor as well. This will extend out because I suspect most accountants will be financial services advisors. I could be wrong. And I haven't had an opportunity to speak with Cass about it yet. She'll know this inside out. But the big news appears to be that if you are an accountant, it will now be compulsory for you to divulge any mental health concerns that you personally have had or are going through when you get a new client. You will also have to divulge all this information to your existing clients and let them assess whether or not they still want to keep using your services. I'm not sure that I've explained that clearly, but it basically means accountants will have to basically supply their mental health history to every person looking for accounting services. And only after they have able, in the government's eyes, or the regulatory body's eyes, to make a decision or a determination as to whether or not you, as an accountant, are a fit and proper person to deal with their accounting issues. And while I can sort of see that a mental health assessment might be warranted in certain cases, I think the can of worms that this opens up broadly in so many areas is going to lead to a huge swelling of numbers in the courts and people suing, well, God knows whoever. Speaking of people suing God knows whoever, you know, Victorians, that the Victorian government's currently trying to pass a bill that will make it impossible for anybody to sue the Victoria Police for anything that they've done in the last few years. Yep, that means everybody who's got a case against them for the riots, that's the police riots, not the people ones. There were no people riots, but the police in their riot gear came out and shot the people with rubber bullets at the shrine after what was one of the most memorable, one of the most unifying, and certainly one of the largest protests this country's ever seen in a one day or one afternoon sort of event. There were so many people there. The police were so worried, they put a no-fly zone over the city areas so that news helicopters could get above. Of course, they said that was tactical so that they could move their police into position to, corral or kettle the crowds. And of course, it made it difficult for the aerial TV assets to get good pictures of the police beating the shit out of old women and spraying them with pepper spray and the myriad other crimes that they committed that day. So the Victorian government, Heil, whatever her name is, are going to push this through. Of course they are, because they have the numbers. They can do whatever they bloody like. Victorians, that's disgusting. That is so corrupt, so beyond corrupt. They're using the excuse that it's got to do with insurance and the state government only has limited liability in these sorts of situations. They're going to make it impossible for anybody to take them to court over the things they've done. Now, if we've learned anything at all in our time together over the last few years, particularly if you were in watching this show from the early days with the sessions we had with Fitz and Magna Carta, you'll understand that there is all sorts of legal issues, fraught issues, and ways this can be fought. And there are plenty of people in Victoria who will fight it. Will anybody up at the next election on a platform to remove this bill? Because we've learned a bill that can be introduced and you get enough people in that place who say, no, 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 no. Now, I'm using Parliament as the example because at the moment it's really the only one most people understand. But Fitz and I were talking about something a little more different, a people's parliament more than a politician's parliament, which is, after all, how things are meant to be done. So I don't know how I got onto that, but I did, so apologise. Oh, yeah, I know that the accountant thing. Yeah, I've moved on. All right, there's a couple of things I want to show you tonight, folks. Have I said hello to everybody? Let me just scan down and see if there's too many questions. Barbara Fitzpatrick, how lovely to see you in. The lovely Michelle Bradley Smith is rocking the admin part of our chat. So too is Sunflower. Hello, gorgeous. Oh, and Aussie Sue's in as well. Aussie Sue has some of the best pictures on her Facebook page. I mean, some seriously spectacular, bloody, wonderfully spectacular. I'm padding here, in case you're wondering. Spectacular pictures. Today, of course, we have learned there is another monkeypox outbreak. This picture came off Aussie Sue's Facebook page. I just love that. There is another one, I think. I'm not sure if it came off hers or someone else's, where it's a similar photo. One monkey, one chimp saying, I'm not sick. We're not sick. Nobody's sick. Well, we know who the sick bastards are. They are the sick bastards that somehow manage to get elected every time. And we have to change that. Queensland elections coming up. We need to get good people in there, not people who are going to, be good now, and get elected. But as soon as they get in there, get corrupted. That can't happen. And we need to do it in overwhelming numbers. We need to give those people who aren't willing to stand up and put themselves in that position someone to vote for in every electorate. Now, I was talking to someone today. I want to say it's down south New South Wales, southern central New South Wales, coastal areas, somewhere down that way. I think it was who I was talking to, was telling me that the Liberal Party are not even running candidates in 12 significant electorates where the local council elections are happening shortly. Now, why is that? Because Labor and the Greens have this great destructive policy. And why are the Liberal Party not putting anybody up in there? Because they obviously believe down that way there's a lot of tree huggers, a lot of Greens, and a lot of Labor people. Why waste the vote? Well, it might be the case. But that doesn't mean a few others down that way might be interested in standing up as independent people, willing to fight for the people at a local council level. And from there, if we can get enough power in enough local councils, change can be made. All you need is one more vote than the others. And if you can vote the others out and put in a team of people who are genuinely for the people of their community, rather than in it for themselves. Now, I'm sure my recollection, and my father was involved in local government. He was a town clerk or a shire secretary, whatever you want to call it. And I've seen, I don't know how many council meetings I've been to. We need to start again. We need those people who go in believe they're going to do the right thing for the communities. I was quite shocked when I first moved to Queensland in the mid-1980s. And there were local government elections there. And I was quite amazed at how political they were. That was real Labor, Nationals, Liberals kind of advertising on the radio and that kind of stuff. And I hadn't ever seen a party political local government set up because I never saw it like that in Victoria. And I don't believe it was like that until maybe the last 20 years or so. But now it's all politics from the ground up. And some people might be interested in just doing their little bit in the local community and making sure the rates get collected and the roads get filled and they've got someone to complain to if there's a part of the footpath that's lifting. But we need better people than that. We need proactive people. We need a council who will form community groups, who will have interested, diverse people who are capable of providing services, be health related. Now, you are those people. But which among you will stand up? And more to the point, not one, but how many? How many ridings does your local council have? Because you need to stand multiple independents and stack your votes, because they'll do that vote, whatever they do, their vote sharing thing. Unless, yeah, I'm pretty sure they do that, preference voting. So you need to be able to preference each other, because God knows they're not going to preference you in any way, and your preferences will go to them if you don't preference each other. So you need to give the people choice in your area. And to do that, 8 to 15 to a bit more than that of you need to stand up and be the people and sit in that chair. Take in some case, for the term of your elected time, and do good with it, with a team of people who were elected beside you on the similar platform. And on a state level, Victorians, you need to get somebody to stand up and say, we will repeal this bill that protects the corporate criminals and the corrupt police that committed gross crimes against the people of Victoria. Now, you need, I don't know how many seats there are in the Victorian Parliament, but you need that many people by 3 times. You need 3 of them at least in every seat, in every part of the state. And you run a platform on bringing the bastards to the bar. Make them accountable. Now, have no doubt there'll be a lot of usurpers who want to get in on something like that because, well, that's what they like to do. They'll come in, they'll take control, and lo and behold, all of a sudden we've elected another bloody Freemason to the council. We're trying to avoid that, folks. So your discernment needs to come into play. Because those who immediately stick their hands up and want to do this may be the people you're looking for, but they may not. And they will require a bit of inspection. But isn't that what every election is about? Aren't the candidates meant to go out, shake babies and kiss hands, get to know you? The only difference being, I would hope that our candidates won't tell you lies. They will agree with you with the seriousness of the problem, and they will explain to you their solution. And I know many of these independents would agree on a similar tax solution to that which Ricardo put forward. I have seen similar taxation proposals from 1% to 5%. That's the most I've seen. I think I've seen 1%, 2%, and 5%. What's that? What are we currently being taxed at? What's your current tax rate? Somewhere between 30 and 50 cents in the dollar? Will be for most. For some, might be more than that. And then remember that you're taxed on, with the money that you get to take home after you've been taxed. Everything you spend that money on is taxed. Everything. You know that land you think you own? Well, you don't. You share cohabitation with your family on a shared lease with the government. And we'll have more about that tomorrow night. There are so many things, so many big things now that are starting to wake people up in the mainstream media. And it was brought to my attention today that the Ukraine and Russian war is one of those things. Now, if you watch this afternoon's live stream on Nun2K from the car, you can probably go and make yourself a coffee. But I want to talk about this again. Nord Stream 1 and 2, the pipelines that transported Russian gas to mainland Europe, the continental Europe, if you like. And this gas is used for heating in particular during winter, but heating, cooking, the whole deal. And all of a sudden, America pipes up and says, when NATO were making rumblings about Russian movements toward Ukraine and yada, 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 yada. One of the fools in America stood up and said, and I don't want to say it was Biden, said that nothing was unreachable. And that Nord Stream pipeline, well, accidents happen. Now, the Nord Stream pipeline, if you don't remember, I'll explain the story to you shortly. But what I want you to do is remember this story, because this Nord Stream pipeline story is now starting to pop up in mainstream media again with new information indicating that the Ukrainians were responsible, not the Russians for blowing up their own pipeline. The Ukrainians did it. So these are the facts as I understand them surrounding Nord Stream 1 and 2. These facts have been admitted by American media, American government officials. And in fact, a timeline was outlined by one of them. I should have probably tried to get that from somewhere today and shown you. But the timeline was 8 days. Prior to Nord Stream 1 blowing up, the Americans had conducted a training exercise in the vicinity of where the pipeline blew up. However, they were 8 days away when Nord Stream 1 blew up, and Nord Stream 2 for that matter. So, what do we know? Well, we know that an American submarine and an American frigate were operating in that area. The American submarine was much closer to the area of regard, that is, that blew up, than the frigate. It was there for 5 days, in and around that area for 5 days. Now, we only found that out much later, but it gave itself away when it left the area because it left some very significant telltale signs that were fluked and caught on camera from above. It was operating at a reasonably shallow depth. That vessel was identified and as a US nuclear submarine. The day after, no, I beg your pardon, the day of the explosions, another submarine was tracked leaving the area. That was a French nuclear submarine. Now, that is the factual story of what happened. The media are now going to try and spin this, mainstream, are going to try and spin this that the Ukrainians somehow managed to gain a submarine and the sailors and the equipment needed to work at, well, the North Sea isn't shallow as such, I guess. But they don't and never did have access to that sort of technology. Russia would never allow them to keep a submarine, even though they did have a deep sea port. So the mainstream media are going to try and push this Ukrainian theory, and it's total bullshit. The whole reason that Nord Stream 1 and 2 was blown up is because Germany, a member of NATO, was wavering in their commitment to NATO's alliance to bring Ukraine into the fold and ostensibly start a war with Russia. Germany were backing away from that. Why? Well, because Germany were the biggest users of Nord Stream gas in the world. All their heating, all their cooking, natural gas cooking, everything came from that pipeline. And they got it at a pretty good rate from the Russians. What did the Russians get in return? They got hard currency from Germany. Now, this is why NATO was so pissed off, because they'd effectively strangled the hard currency going into Russia using sanctions. But here was NATO member Germany paying Russia for their gas. And Germany quite rightly said, we need the gas. You know, they're only going to turn the pipe down or crank the price up. But we need the gas. Now, NATO, in their infinite wisdom, said, well, what if you couldn't get it from Russia? You'd have to get it from somewhere else. You know, we'll find a way. And Germany said, oh, no. You know, we couldn't go back to the old way. Well, you're going to have to. Now, America wasn't prepared to take on the mission and blow everything up, all the responsibility for it. All right? Because this is a NATO operation. So from my understanding of events surrounding that NATO operation, the US submarine went in with divers, equipment, and explosives and rigged Nord Stream 1 and Nord Stream 2 to explode by remote control. Then they got back in their submarine and scuttled off 8 days, I think it was, before the explosions happened. Now, the explosions weren't on timers. They were remotely controlled and remotely detonated from the French submarine, which was seen departing the area shortly after the explosions. Why? Because they are the two largest allies outside of Germany in NATO. And America could never be seen to be attacking Russia itself. Instead, rogue elements, let's call them, of NATO helped. Well, we now know what those rogue elements of NATO are. They're really the cabal military, Army, Navy, and Air Force. And things have changed somewhat in that part of the world. So now, with the losses that are occurring in Ukraine, forget about what they're telling you, the huge losses in Russia. The losses in Ukraine are staggering. And it is quite ridiculous to believe that without the aid of some significant weaponry from NATO, and they seem very, well, lukewarm would be the way I would term how they would like to use that sort of weaponry. They don't have a big appetite for it. In fact, this story of Ukraine being responsible for Nord Stream 1 and 2 being blown up in the mainstream media smacks to me as a plant story which will enable NATO to distance itself from Ukraine, saving a little bit of face. Because if they can have the world believe that Ukraine somehow managed to manifest a nuclear submarine, or any bloody submarine for that matter, that could get down to the depths that they needed to get to and do whatever exercises they were meant to be doing. And there was a huge foil plan laid out at the time from the US Navy about what that exercise was about. And I don't know if I've got it, but I'll try and go back and find it. But it was absolutely fantastic. Would expect anything that was released from the US military in that part of the world to our part of the world. Very, very piss poor indeed. All right, what else have I got here to show you this fine night? There are some interesting photos being taken in the world. Yeah, I don't know if you can see that properly. People saying that's an oil stain or a finger spot or a sunspot or whatever. So I didn't save it, but I have pictures of this, and I can tell you it is not an oil spot, a sunspot, or any other kind of spot. Where was this taken? This was taken at Larsen Bay in Antarctica. And I think it was taken only a couple of days ago, last Monday. So is it Nibiru? Planet X? I don't know. Just wish I had a camera good enough to get that sort of a view from where I am, because it doesn't look like I'm going to get to Antarctica anytime soon. Speaking of that, Leonard, unfortunately, Len won't be heading to Antarctica because he's had a bit of a medical thing. The company that takes everybody down to Antarctica has asked him to pay an outrageous evacuation fee up front, which I guess he would get back if he didn't need to get evacuated. But the fee was in the vicinity of I want to say 48,000 Australian dollars, which would have put it over 75 or 80,000, well, 70 to 80,000 American dollars. That was just as an insurance policy should he have a medical episode on the ice and they need to fly him out, which would mean they covered the cost of the 737 down and back just for him. I think that'd do enough for my heart right there, just hearing that. I wouldn't be going. So unfortunately, Len won't be heading off to Antarctica. Where's Wally? Not the one that you're all thinking of, but the different Where's Wally is heading off from all accounts. In fact, there might be a couple of Australians now heading for the final experiment. Is it flat? Is it round? More on that, in the days and weeks ahead. I want to tell you about a very special poker run that is happening this weekend. Now, if you happen to be in far north Queensland, Ingham is the place to be at. The My Place Ingham crew there, and my very good mate One Eye, who I call Skipper Pete, is part of putting all this on. So it is a bike and a car poker run, heading out to a property where beers, burgers, and great music and good company will ensue. $2 per card draw for the winners, and it's a 10 a.m. start at the Forest Beach Hotel. So if you want to be part of all that, I would encourage you to get along and say good day to Skipper Pete, or One Eye, as he's probably preferring to be known, and you'll find him easier than everybody knows who One Eye is. They may not know who Skipper Pete is. But if you're up that way, get into the poker run. I wish I could be there for it. Really do. It would be great. Although I don't know that the old bus would be too handy going around some of those corners. Well, who knew that we were going to get a new private healthcare service, folks? I'm sort of excited about it. Are you? Well, I'm probably more excited about it than you because I know where that new health service is going to be. And I don't mind going to this place. Bunnings are trialling health stations where customers can check their blood pressure and other vitals when they visit the stores. I noticed the other day that there are now defibrillators in every aisle at Bunnings. You taking a note? Or maybe every second aisle. Defibrillators are popping up everywhere in businesses all around the place. A very disturbing study has been released by an international study by a large group of cancer specialist doctors who have gone through their books and compared new patients for the last 2 years. They were staggered to discover that of all of them, and I forget now exactly how many that number was, but it was some hundreds of cancer, very high-end cancer specialists, doctors, said that in the last 2 years, not one of them, not one, had a new cancer patient older than 45. Now, we know how the incidence of cancer has gone up, unsurprisingly, because, well, the ability to immunosuppress this sort of shit is gone from a lot of people's bodies. But that's a pretty staggering number. Nobody over 45 coming in with new cancer, but a lot of people under 45. We've seen huge increases in childhood cancer rates. We've seen huge increases in those who have been in remission for years and all of a sudden out of nowhere have gone back to full bloom, stage 4. Thank you, mother, for the chickens, and are gone. Most people, most thinking people, are putting it together in here. Many of us are a bit ahead of the game. We have to be tolerant. We have to be able to explain what's happened in the last 4 years in a way that isn't condescending. It's like trying to explain what happened between the Russia and Ukraine. You have to understand the truth. You have to know the truth, believe that to be the truth. And I do with all my heart. I can't, and if anybody can actually come out and disprove me with something other than something supplied in mainstream media, because trust me, I'll prove it, but I won't be using anything that came through in mainstream media. We can't allow the bullshit to continue. So when somebody says to you in the street, "Oh, did you hear about the Ukrainians? They had a submarine and blew up the Russians' gas." Well, you can say, "Well, no, actually, that didn't happen like that." Appreciate the media thinks that, but this is 2.5 years old now, however long it was. No, I didn't even look it up how long ago Nord Stream was. But tell them it's crap. And don't tell them in a bad way. Explain to them that no, at the time, do you remember what was happening politically? NATO were trying to get Ukraine into NATO. And they'd had a huge problem with prosecutors, with Joe Biden threatening to take away $1 billion worth of aid. And just watch me was the quote, if you recall. So, yep, bugger me. That prosecutor got sacked. But then Donald Trump got elected. And things in Ukraine changed quite radically. But only for 4 years. When Donald Trump was ousted again, the corruption took back over. However, in that 4 years, so much was learned, particularly about the secret biolabs that the US were producing God knows what sort of toxic shit out of along the border with Russia. And we know 100% for sure that what was being studied in those biolabs was genetically modified agents to target specific genetic types of Russians, particularly the ones that lived along the border. Didn't want to kill the ones in far western Russia. No. Or far eastern Russia, that would be. Or the ones in northern Russia, or the ones in... No, just the ones in the area of regard that NATO were very interested in. Now, maybe it doesn't mean much to you. Maybe you don't understand the geography of the area. I would urge you to have a look at a map. I would urge you to go and have a look at Vladimir Putin's interview with Tucker Carlson and just watch the first 20 minutes. In that first 20 minutes, he gives a very accurate historical representation of how and why Ukraine is Russia and always has been. And I would urge any people that you come across that need this explained to them to watch that particular interview, particularly the first 20 minutes where Putin gives him a history lesson in a very nice way. I'm sure Tucker Carlson didn't think that's what he was getting at the time. It took him a little while to understand that he needed to know that history so that what came next made more sense. We need to be able to be that way with the newbies, the normies, who are just starting to come to. And they're starting to come to because there are so many weird, truly weird, shocking things that are happening in this country. Too many restrictions being placed upon us, and only more of them to come. Now, speaking of more of them to come, what do we think is going to happen now?
Today, the emergency committee met and advised me that, in its view, the situation constitutes a public health emergency of international concern. I have accepted that advice. The detection and rapid spread of a new clade of Mpox in eastern DRC, its detection in neighboring countries that had not previously reported Mpox, and the potential for further spread within Africa and beyond is very worrying. In addition to other outbreaks of other clades of Mpox in other parts of Africa, it's clear that a coordinated international response is essential to stop these outbreaks and save lives.
Yeah. So, will they go the lockdowns again? Do you think they'll have the balls to do that? And will you have the balls to not let them? Will your neighbours, who last time had no balls at all suddenly start to grow some? I think the bald versus debald community, well, I think we're growing. Probably not an analogy. But at what pace we need to gather this? As I was saying to somebody the other day, we don't need to have 25 million people on board with us. What we need to be is the snowball, this big. You know, if there is 1 million of us, that's probably enough to begin the snowball when the information gates start opening further. I mean, they're doing plenty of it now. But when they start to open further, and when there is undeniable, irrefutable, inexcusable fact placed in front of the people, we will get a large swing to our snowball. What happens with snowballs? They gather momentum, they gather size, they gather weight, and they can do a lot of damage. We need to be the snowball. And once that snowball has rolled into Canberra and cleaned out the halls of that place, from that snowball must emerge the new leadership of this country, by, for, and with the people. I think there are ways and means that the people can be involved much more directly in the governance of this great land, of ours. We should not rely on a very small group of individuals and a very large number of paid bureaucrats and sycophants to handle our business, because they don't work for us. They work for a corporation. And the sooner more Australians wake up to that fact and understand that you can fight a corporation the same way as you can fight any other, fight a government corporation the same way as you can fight any other corporation. Unfortunately, we're going to need better courts, because our judiciary has been bastardized, corrupted, and muted by the ongoing filth in our political realm. And while I said today, there are sitting members that I do support. I do support Malcolm Roberts. I do support Gerard Rennick. Well, yes, I do support a lot of what Gerard Rennick says. He doesn't deal with the people terribly well, but I do like what he says. Antic, he is also seemingly too late to the party, like them all, but at least he's up there and getting things put down formally into Hansard, things that we can use later down the track as proof and evidence. Babbitt, Roberts, I think I've named them all. So fingers crossed with their help, with their guidance, because we're probably going to need it at times. Hotheads are not going to fix this, folks. In the last week, I've had, I wouldn't be able to guess, but well over 20 people talk to me with the resounding theme in every conversation being, it's time we stood up. It's time we took it to them. Now, that's probably got to be the most amount of people I've heard talking about actively, picking up the pitchfork, so to speak, ever in a week. That's very dangerous, folks. The secret to good comedy is timing, but that's not the only thing it's the secret to. Right now, the timing, if groups or certain elements of the freedom movement were to step up with their pitchforks, they would be mown down with automatic weapons. Those that survived that would be dragged before the courts and put on a show trial of such immense proportions that it would shake the foundations of belief of every normie that was still attached to the brainwashing and the programming that they've received in their life. That's not going to help us. That's not going to help us. We are not the arbiters of the timing in this battle. We are merely pawns, potentially players, but we are not the arbiters of the timing for it, unless we are. And that's a much more difficult and dangerous conversation to have. One that you wouldn't have in a forum like this, I can tell you. So, for those folks who are feeling the urge to get a little physical, I implore you, please don't. Please educate yourself more so that when the neighbour who drives you mad because they're rolling up for number 7 and they're judging you because you haven't had one, I implore you, turn the other cheek. Try and make them see what we are seeing now, where truth is coming out, but it is being skewed severely by the mainstream media. Let them know that there are other media areas where people who do real research, they may not present or look, like the TV presenters that they're used to seeing. But the research that these people do and the figures that they present, well, can only be refuted if you're prepared to put in the work to refute them. If you want to test those figures and say, oh, that's bullshit, oh, that can't be right, well, we'll do that. Because that's one of the greatest ways to learn what we're doing here. I felt sure some years ago that somewhere on the TGA website, they would tell us that the whole jab was a medical experiment. It took time to go through the pages of the website. I narrowed down to where I thought it might be and turned out reasonably close. It only took a few hours to find it. But when I did, I almost missed it because it was slipped into a line in a paragraph. The results of the medical trial the clinical trial will be available in mid-2023. Right there on the TGA website. Now, I was having arguments with people at that stage who didn't believe that it was a medical experiment. Oh, the government would never do that to you. So I asked people, gave them the link, told them what they had to follow. Find the page, go and find it yourself. Many did. We converted a lot of people to our side of the argument with that. This is the kind of thing we're probably going to have to do again. I'm very guilty of forgetting all the things I've spoken about in the last however many years I've been doing this. I think we're coming up to 500 and something shows. There is so much that I covered back in the early days that I have stored up here. And when, I get a message like I did today from Cass, where she was telling me about this whole Ukraine thing, I'm like, yeah, but we know that, and we know this, and we know that. And she's going, yeah, but the normies don't. Well, she's 100% right. And we've forgotten so much. I mean, how long has it been since you've thought about Nord Stream? So we've forgotten so much about what set up the position we are currently in now, that we must go back. We must go back and have another look at what we did. And maybe that's something that if you've got a bit of time and you know how to cut some video, I'd appreciate your help with, because I don't have the time to go back through my old shows, but there would be chunks of those shows that might be worth bringing out and uploading as a separate little video, where we do explain, back in the day, 2, 3, 4 years ago, whenever it was, the little things that are now starting to come out and being manipulated by mainstream media. We can tell and show and prove we are truthful. And the date stamps and time stamps on those videos going back years, not just mine, everybody's videos. Those date stamps go back years, which will put paid to the lie that we were all conspiracy theorists and that there was nothing to worry about. Would help clear many people's names. But by now, if you're a conspiracy theorist, you wear that badge with pride. You will quite happily fuck up somebody's dinner party when they ask you a snide question about, is the earth flat or round, flat or a globe? Or they ask you how many jabs you've had. Or when you say none, they attack you, cast aspersions at your mental acuity. I love those sorts of dinner parties. God, I love them. There's usually a lot of academics there. Academics, God love you. The most easily programmed people on the planet. They don't like you hearing that. They don't like you saying that. They certainly don't like hearing it. But they are. And when you happen to be sitting at a dinner table with 2 or 3 of them and you tell them all and you look them in the eye individually and you say you all failed the IQ test, and they get very offended by it, and you calmly explain why it was an IQ test and how they failed it, and then sit back and have a sip of your wine, maybe a bite of your roast, and listen to them make excuses. Excuses. You'll know when they've run out of excuses, because they will fall back on, I've been to university, I've got 3 degrees. As I said to one fellow one night over dinner, I said, that means absolutely nothing to me except you were the easiest programmed. You took the brainwashing really well. And being an academic, I imagine you're not much of a woodworker. I imagine you're not a sculptor or a painter or an artist or a musician. I imagine outside of the particular area that you are focused on, you can't tie up your shoelaces. And I actually looked under the table at that time and saw that he was wearing zip-up boots. I made a joke about that, nearly had to leave the party. However, not everybody is going to be that direct at a dinner party. And if I'm honest, I would advise you not to do it. I'd had a particularly long day. I had been invited along to something that turned out to be not at all what I was invited along to. And I was desperately trying to find my way out and had some highbrows decide they wanted to learn all about me. They'd obviously heard a little bit about what I do. Interesting times. But they don't like being told they didn't pass the IQ test, and nor can they answer me honestly one question. If you didn't take the programming, if you didn't accept what your lecturer was telling you, if you had questions, if you had real questions, and the answers that they provided to you still didn't convince you that they were right, would you have passed your PhD? And the answer, of course, which he didn't want to admit, was no. Of course he wouldn't. There is not one person that holds a bachelor of anything, a PhD of anything, a master's in anything that ever got it because they questioned the lecturer teaching it to them. They learned by rote. And that's why these sorts of individuals that go through university, get programmed, and then come out into our communities and our businesses will work in a very, very different way than what people my age and older remember university graduates to work like. It's almost like they have a completely different agenda. And in some cases, that's because they've been programmed with a completely different agenda. And our education departments are full of those little lemmings, beautifully programmed by out which I am XY or XXY or YYX or whatever. But we've got to give everybody the chance to get blue hair, pink nostrils, and a nice piercing. Because it'll make me feel better if we can do that. Well, I do hope you are feeling better. How long have I been going? Oh, shit, over an hour. I do have a couple more things I'll whip through fairly quickly. Actually, there are two short videos here that I will not play because I'll probably get None2K suspended or striked if I play them. Instead, let's have a little talk about digital ID. Horrible, horrible, horrible woman that introduced it, Katie Gallagher, another Labor troglodyte, brought it into the Senate where she gagged debate on it, and there was no questions allowed, no debate, no nothing. And it was sent to the lower house where it was pushed back on and now has reemerged as a bill that, has been passed. If it hasn't already been passed, it's going to be enforced by December 1.
The digital ID legislation has not come into effect yet. It doesn't come into effect until the 1st of December this year. The law is very clear that there must be alternate ways provided for the community to engage with government. That has been made very clear across government. And I would say if you want to forward me that constituent, I would be issue, even if it's de-identified, I'd be very happy to look at it, but we have been very clear. It is a voluntary system, it is a safe system, it is a secure system, and it's simply a means of verifying yourself in a way that gives you control of your own documentation.
Why the fuck do I need to verify myself? I know who I am. I have a little piece of plastic with my photo on it. It looks like me, has my name beside it. Well, has a name beside it. It's a name. But it's a name that, anybody in authority seems to understand and accept if I wave it at them. It's going to go a lot further than that, folks. Yes, there will be an alternative way. Let me outline how you get a passport. Right now, passports 2 to 4 weeks. You should have a passport in that time frame. Once this is introduced, if you use a digital ID, you will get your passport similar time frame, much quicker, possibly. If you choose not to go through a system, but go through whatever other identification hoop they choose, it will be the long road, the very long road. You need a passport to get out of the country by the end of the week. That means a rush job. All right, that can be done. It's an extra cost, but yes, we can do it. What's your digital ID number? I don't have one. Oh, well, now you're going to have to come in the office, and then we've got a mountain of paperwork for you to fill out. We're going to have to question you as to why don't you have a digital ID? It'd be so much easier if you had a digital ID. We can't see you for 2 weeks because we have people coming in. We're backed up. Yeah, they don't tell you they have one person working that desk and 500 people a day lining up for it. That's how they will drive you to a digital ID for a passport. But oh, wait, snarky. And I particularly want you to wait. And I hope this video pauses at the right point at the end of this video. I want you to look at this smarmy prick's face at the end of this little speech he gives.
Today, I unveil a project that we have in development that we call the Trust Exchange, or TEX. I'm collaborating on this project with my colleagues, Senator Katie Gallagher, the Minister of Finance, who has carriage of digital ID, and the Assistant Treasurer and Minister for the ATO, Stephen Jones. Service Australia is partnering with other government systems to develop TEX, to give Australians the ability to verify their identity and credentials based on official information already held by the Australian Government. I want to stress that TEX is currently in the proof of concept stage. We have an $11.4 million Commonwealth investment in the build-out as part of the Digital ID project. I think business is keen, and to be clear, TEX will be an opt-in system. I suspect people will vote with their feet once they have an option, and they'll choose businesses that offer them the convenience of control and security of TEX. I'm pleased to advise that Telstra and Google have welcomed the opportunity to be involved in the development of this important step towards our digital future. And the Tech Council of Australia, the Commonwealth Bank and employment platform SEEK have all given in-principle support for TEX. Imagine if we practiced radical trust in the people, the consumers of government services, and we listen to them about what they need and how they want to access it. In return, we may be rewarded with the radical trust from the community necessary to fulfil our ambitions of an easy, useful, simple, safe, seamless digital future. Thank you very much.
I was hoping it would freeze it. Bill Shorten, king of the smarmy smirk. He thinks himself so smart being able to deliver that. I'd suggest you go back and watch it 2 or 3 times and listen to exactly what he is saying there. It's very important. We're going to talk about it more tomorrow night. But what does it all mean?
Australians won't have to pull out their licence at the pub anymore under a gold standard digital ID being developed. Government Services Minister Bill Shorten is today unveiling the new initiative. It means when you enter a club or hotel, a digital token will be sent to that business to verify you are who you say you are without transferring them your data. It also cracks down on scammers by limiting data shared with businesses.
It sends every venue you go to a token verifying that, yes, you are the person you say you are standing at the door. Why? Does it sound familiar to you in any way, shape or form? Does it sound like the QR code crap you had to go through a couple of years ago? Because that's exactly what it is. A QR code. Yep. You may not have to wave your license around anymore. You'll just walk in with a QR code. Now, what I'm interested in is if it doesn't provide any personal information, the QR code, well, you all know what a QR code looks like. It doesn't have a picture on it. So what's the difference? Maybe they will put a picture on it. So what's the difference between a QR card with a code on it and my picture and my license with my picture? The big difference is You've just told the government where you've gone, what time you've gone, how long you've stayed there, what you've had to drink and be merry with, how much you've shoved into a pokey. I mean, the clubs already know that if you're a pokey player and a regular and you play off a card, they know exactly how much money you put in every week, every day, every minute. They can break it down that low. And they mark that. Do you want to share that with the government? Because that's what this card will do. No longer will you have to walk up to a pokey machine and just wave your game card at it. Oh, no. No, now you'll need to get your QR code ID yourself into that poker machine, then pull out your spendings card, which will have another QR code on it, and you can beep that up to whatever pressure, whatever amount you want to please to play, and then you go away. Now, if the government decides after a couple of hours playing and you've lost $500 that you can't play anymore, I think that's probably a good thing. But their clubs are already onto that kind of thing now and doing it. So why would government need to be involved? They're saying in both those grabs, it's for our benefit. What possible benefit is there in having the government send a club I'm going to a token that says, yeah, that's Carl? How does that make me safer? Bear in mind, our government likes to push you into MyGov, a completely corrupted and hackable service. Not through the front door, no, but through the associated services. The government knows this. They're not doing anything greatly to fix it. So all your MyGov information, everything they hold on you, is hackable. Don't believe for 1 second that it's not. If you can, walk away. Walk away. Walk away. But their plan is to drive us to it. Further, harder, faster. Has to be avoided, folks. We have to push back. We have to make sure that we get people into power that we trust and who will do the right thing. Maybe are incorruptible. I don't know if such a person exists, but there are good people in the world. There are good people in your town. How about you be the one responsible for finding one and seeing whether you can encourage them to stand up and be the person your area needs in the next election, whether that be local, state, or federal. That's what we need. To close tonight, I'm going to play one last video. I find this one particularly disturbing because of all the bullshit we've had to go through regarding plastic. Now, while I do not subscribe to throwing plastics or getting plastics into the ocean, I'm sure none of us do. And I have been watching some amazing new inventions regarding capturing the plastics in our oceans and what to do with it once it's been caught. That's something I don't know for what reason I've actually had an idea on for many years. And I'm looking to see whether or not there is something like that technology around. And there kind of sort of is, but there kind of sort of isn't either. So I'm just having a bit of a look. I'm not in a position to, go and build a ship and go around picking up the world's garbage. But who knows? If Nasara Jasara comes our way, I just might be. One of the big messages with plastic straws where they were killing our wildlife. I recall there were pictures of all sorts of wildlife with straws poking out of different orifices of them. Noses choking on them, wrapped around their necks, wrapped around flippers, all sorts of it. And I agree, absolutely horrible. Plastic straws, all right, bit of a problem. But there was a reason we went away from paper straws many years ago, because I do remember paper straws as a kid. and not plastic ones. Plastic came in, it was quite a novelty. However, a warning has now come out from a man in a blue hat, and it's probably worth heeding.
All right, here's a quick tip. You know those paper straws that are really good for the environment? Well, the glue that holds it together is extremely toxic. So if you're faced with those straws, you're better off just drinking out of the cup.
Well, I got to say that kind of makes perfect sense to me, and I would have thought to you too. God knows what they've got in the cup, though. Usually waxed on the inside, though, so if you can drink it fast enough, you probably will do okay with it. There is one final image I'd like to show you. Of course, we spoke about Mpox being the next big thing, but there's another shocking disease which has so far killed 19 people. Health warning is a deadly virus with no cure, spreads to 19 humans in Europe. It's unstoppable. And what is it called? It's called the sloth virus. Don't pay it too much attention, folks. We'll just keep going with the monkeypox at this point in time. And speaking of monkeys, I haven't been into the chat, so I haven't seen anybody asking me anything. Hang on a minute. I'll try and do a quick scroll, see if anybody has. Oh, wow. Alana, that's pretty wild. He's got to pay $1,400 just to keep his money away from Cbus and the likes. Well, that would be the fees I would have thought to set up. Is that right? That'd be the fees I would have thought to set up without any transfer fees from another super fund, so to speak, transferring money across from another super fund. So to set up from scratch, I would have thought that's cheap for a self-managed super fund, and it's a tax deduction. So I would be probably embracing that. Well, at 17, I was going to drink my $110 a week wage, unfortunately, rather than thinking about doing something decent with it. G'day, Agate Master. Haven't seen you in for a little while. Angela, lovely to see you from the Republic or the Communist Republic of Victoria. Angela, I don't know if you know about it or you've already booked or not, but coming to Victoria for the great My Place Camp Out, happening November 29th through to December the 1st. Doris and Maddie, and I don't know that Maddie's heavily involved with the organisation of it, and Becky, of course, from Truth Seekers TV, heavily involved in the arranging of this fabulous weekend away. And I'm heading down to that one too. So, Angela, if you're going to be around, why don't you make a booking? You can do so by going to myplaceaustralia.org and clicking on the link, finding out more information, registering for it there. I don't know. I've got to ring Beckio, actually, and Doris and find out how many spaces are left. I know we have a few people who are going to be travelling with me heading down to Victoria. I know one of those groups in particular do not want to travel down the coast road. So we might be able to arrange something a bit different. Go down the inland way and come back up the coast road, because I am, come hell or high water, stopping in at Sandy and Baz's place, which is the Donkey Sanctuary. Now, I've asked you before, I'll ask you again, folks, the GoFundMe page, I haven't got the link here to show you tonight, but on previous shows I've put it up. You please grab that link, go and have a look. The Donkey Sanctuary needs a new float, and we're working with a float manufacturing company, trying to get some sort of a deal from them at the moment, hoping we can help out, but no news to report on that so far, unfortunately. But we will keep fingers crossed and never give up in this business. That's what we do. So sorry, Alana, that was my, I said that before. No, you've got to pay to set up a super fund. It's a trust. So everybody pays to set up a self-managed super fund. But like I say, it is a tax deduction. And I'm sure if $1,400 up front was difficult and hard for him to come by, as I'm sure at 17 years seemed like a hell of a mountain. I guess save it would be my advice. Save it. There's probably one or two other ways you could do this, but it would mean amalgamating with your super or something like that. And I think it would just be very, very messy. And I'm no advisor in this area. Cass's team are the best to talk to and the cheapest. Go and ask. If you think $1,400 is expensive, Alana, ring another company, any other taxation accounting company and self-managed super fund setter-uppers, and ask them what it would cost to set up a self-managed super fund for a 17-year-old who's never had a job before. And I'd be interested to see the results, see how they compare. Thank you, Phil. It was Wollongong I was talking about. No Liberal Party candidates. Wow. That's, wow. Now, that would be... yeah, so that candidate against the wind turbines, I'm just trying to think of his name. Wow, he lost quite a lot out of that. I'm amazed the Liberal Party, well, I know why they're doing it, but it takes away the opportunity for the Conservative vote. And that's why it's important we get somebody else up in that area. I know a bloke down Wollongong way, now that we think about it. He's had some experience in elections. Don't know whether or not he'd stand again. But interesting. What am I? Just having a bit of a glance, see what else is here. Yes, should be 100% right there. Crunch, they're all bloodsuckers. Angela, 100%. Many are Freemasons, and it's how they keep the club going, I think. And they start at the lowest levels. And they don't just have to be in positions of power. The brethren stretch all the way down to the street sweepers and all the way up to those sitting in the highest levels of power in our nation. It's just how they work. It's, yeah. Yeah. Okay, I'm just scanning. Oh, Rock and Housewife, you are so right on this. It's so hard to trust anyone from the government ever again. So hard to trust anyone from the health services ever again. You know, it's just, I'm sure most of them thought they were doing the right thing. But what they have in fact done is expose the industry they thought they were doing good in to what it really is doing. And now their bosses and their actions are showing that there is obviously another agenda working. And while you're just a mainstream nurse working on the wards, there ain't nothing you can do about it. You will comply or you will be sacked. If you don't like it, we will just chop back your hours to a point where you'll go looking for a new job. It is beyond pathetic. It is great union authorized tactics for HR people to use. Why is it union authorized? Well, because in many cases, the hospital is paying the union fees of many people working in the hospital, except those people don't know they've joined a union. And do you know who headed up the union that was best known for doing that a few years back? That prick Bill Shorten. He's the bloke that took away penalty rates to all the workers for spotless cleaning in Victoria. He was the one that got the benefit of the members' dues that Spotless paid on behalf of all their employees to the AWU. They didn't know, the employees didn't know they'd been signed up to a union. Why was Bill signing people up to a union and not telling them they were signed up? Well, union in politics, and particularly in union and Labor politics, numbers are power. The more people you have in the union, the more power base you have, the bigger stick you can wield in the political playground. And Bill Shorten came with the biggest political stick. That's why he got a tilt at the prime ministership. Thankfully, there were still some journalists capable of being honest, and most of the people saw him for what he is. That horrible little bastard at school with the cheeky little smirk who'd dob on you in a second for doing anything and make $1 out of your demise any way he could. That's the filthy prick who is also in charge of the NDIA/NDIS. You know, that organization that spends over $62 billion a year, the largest amount of budget allocated money, bar none, over and above our defense forces. Think about that. And think about how you'd trust him with your digital ID. Because right now, I wouldn't trust the bastard as far as I could kick him, and my digital ID, well, there won't be a digital ID in my future unless something very, very drastic is made to happen. So, and I would hope feel exactly the same way. In fact, if it did come down to being forced into a digital ID situation at some point, I think many of us might start acting like dickheads, and not just on the road.
You let one ant stand up to us, then they all might stand up. Those puny little ants outnumber us 100 to 1. And if they ever figure that out, there goes our way of life. It's not about food. It's about keeping those ants in line. That's why we're going back. Does anybody else want to stay? Let's rock!